Hello, it's Jess. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. If you've seen the title and the thumbnail, you know that this is going to be my May wrap-up. So I actually ended up reading 7 books in the month of May, but like I mentioned in one of my other videos, I am working on vlogs and they are taking time, and so I'm actually only going to talk to you about 4 books today. I don't like to put books in my wrap-ups if they're also in a vlog until the vlog is out. So whatever, you guys don't care about that. Let's talk about the books. So like I said, I have 4 books to talk to you about today. The first one I want to talk about is The Things We Water by Mariana Zapata. Probably over like the past year and a half to 2-ish years, I have been getting more into reading romance. I still don't think that I would consider it one of my main genres, and to be perfectly honest, I'm still even like learning what I like within that genre, just because like I have not read that many titles in the grand scheme of things. But everyone talks about Mariana Zapata, and I was like, I want to give her a try at some point. And then she had a new book come out that's actually like a paranormal romance, and it was available in Kindle Unlimited, so I decided to give it a try, and I actually really enjoyed it. I gave this 4 stars. So this is a story about a bunch of supernatural beings. It's also a romance. So basically our main character, I'm not gonna lie, I've forgotten her name. Honestly, I don't remember a single character's name in here except for Duncan. But anyways, we follow our main character, and she is like some type of supernatural being, but we're not really sure what she is. She was adopted by werewolf parents, and they loved her and raised her, but like it's not necessarily super clear what type of supernatural being she is. She also has like 2 best friends who are a married couple that are also a werewolf. The main character lives kind of a nomadic lifestyle. She has an RV that she lives in, and she just goes from town to town. She works online, and she really likes living in her RV, having this nomadic lifestyle. But about 2 years before the start of the book, while she was out living her life, she was at a campground. Another supernatural being was kind of like left on her doorstep, and we're also not really sure what this other supernatural being is. He is intelligent, and he is a baby. He's 2 years old, but basically he has like the shape of like a dog, but he's not a werewolf. She is able to communicate psychically with this like puppy creature, but she knows that like he's not a werewolf because she was raised by werewolves. Her 2 best friends are werewolves, so like she knows he's not a werewolf. But for the first 2 years of his life, he just looks like a puppy. And so even though he's intelligent and they can communicate together, it's not really like a big deal that she's taking care of this baby, because like he's a baby. They don't necessarily need to worry if people see them, because to outward appearances, he looks like a puppy and she looks like a normal person, even though both of them are these supernatural creatures of unknown origins. She names him Duncan, the little baby, and his nickname is Donut. And I just think that Donut is just such a cute little nickname. As he gets older, he starts to change, and it becomes basically impossible for him to hide like living out in the world amongst regular humans, because like it becomes very obvious that he is not a normal puppy. Like he is something else. So the main character, she contacts her best friend. Her best friend's cousin is like the leader of this like kind of hidden supernatural community. They are extremely private. It's really difficult to, first of all, most of the supernatural community can blend in with like regular humans, and so like a lot of them just live their normal lives, and they don't even know that like communities, like exclusive supernatural communities, exist and are hidden. But even if you do know it, like they won't necessarily let you in. There's a very special vetting process for this, and like also if you do decide that you moved there, you have to prove that you want to be a part of the community. You have to be there for 3 months, and then if you are single, you have to marry someone there. It's, you know, just a little stipulation because this is a romance. And so the main character doesn't necessarily want to be married. Like, she would like to be married eventually, but it hasn't really been on her radar at like the specific time period of her life because she's been really preoccupied raising Duncan and taking care of him because, like I said, he's a baby. He's 2-ish, like a little past 2 when like the book starts. So he's a very, very demanding child. The main character's best friend's cousin is a like leader, and he actually like owns the land that this like supernatural community is existing on. And so she goes to her best friend and she's like, can you please get me a meeting to see if Duncan and I can go live there, because like we can't stay in society. Like, look at him, he's very obviously not a normal puppy. Like, people are gonna start to notice. Long story short, he gets her an audience and they go and she meets, and you know, they do like their background check and all of that stuff, and she begins her trial that she has to stay there for 3 months before she can like officially become a part of the community. And it's basically meant to be a place where people who are like very obviously magical can live in safety. It's a really, really fun book. It definitely feels very, very magical, and it was just really, really sweet. Honestly, I was just smiling when I was reading this book. Like I mentioned, because the main character is single with Duncan, as like part of her moving to this community, because she is not directly related to anyone who's already a part of the community, because that's another thing. Like, if you have like a blood relative that is a part of this community, you can be allowed to join. But if you do not have a blood relative, then you have to get married to somebody who is a part of this community. I mean, it's basically there so that this can be a romance book, but like also so that they have this added sense of security that like you're committed to this community, like you're not gonna just expose them. I had such a great time reading this book. It does seem like a little bit of a silly premise. There are definitely like a couple of cheesier moments, but because the book is like so sweet and wholesome and just feels so warm, the cheesiness kind of worked with everything. There's definitely a sense of found family here, as like the main character comes in with just her son and then is slowly accepted by the community and slowly wins them over. They're trying to figure out like, what is Duncan? They're trying to make sure that like he's well taken care of, that as he gets older they can answer questions about like, what is he like. They can make sure that he has a sense of community and he doesn't feel like isolated because he's so different. So it's just really, really wholesome and beautiful. I think the romantic tension was really, really well executed. There was, I will say, a little bit of miscommunication within the romance. Now, that is something that normally pisses me off. However, the way it was done in this book, it was like very, very mild, and it didn't actually result in any conflict. It just resulted in like some confusion. So even though I normally hate miscommunication, it didn't really bug me this time, but I did want to mention that because I know it is a big pet peeve for a lot of people that are reading romance. So just letting you know, I love the romance. I thought the pacing felt so natural. I think that like maybe I do like slow burn romances. Maybe I should try a few more by this author. If you want like a supernatural romance that's like got a lot of found family, it's very wholesome, very sweet, very tender, then I definitely recommend this book. Next up, I read The Book That Broke the World by Mark Lawrence. This is what my book club and I are reading. I've already started book 3. This is the library trilogy and it is officially completed. This is a series that is about a magical library. In book 1, you're following 2 main characters. You're following Lavira and Ivar. Lavira is at the start of the book a child, and then by the end of book 1, she is a fully grown adult. Basically, her village is attacked, and as a result she's taken to the capital, and then there she becomes an apprentice librarian and trains, and then like eventually becomes a full-fledged librarian at this library. Ivar is living with his 4, 5 siblings. how many are there? But it doesn't matter. But he's living inside the library, and he has actually been in there his entire life. Him and his siblings are trapped in this one chamber of the library. They can't get out. The doors won't open for them. And book one is basically watching the two of these stories slowly over time get intertwined together, and then seeing how they overlap and what that reveals about everything else. Book one was definitely a lot of setup. It invested a lot of time in getting you really attached to Levira and Ivar, and honestly I think it did a really good job of getting you attached to those characters. I rated book one 3.5 stars. I thought it was a good solid first entry into a fantasy series, but it did feel like Act 1. It felt like a setup book. You can look at my previous wrap up if you want to know like more thoughts about that. Moving on to book 2. I don't really want to tell you too much about what actually happens. I don't want to spoil anything, but again, the whole thing is revolving around this magical library. Honestly, I liked this book less. I actually bumped the rating down to a 3-star for this book. And the main reason is because in this, like probably over half of the book is a third point of view of a brand new character and their story of like their life. That's like over half the book, and like to be perfectly honest, I was like, okay, if we get to the end and the payoff is worth it, then that's fine. But like we got to the end of this book and the payoff for this new information, this new character was like nothing. I have started book 3 and I still don't necessarily know that we even needed that character. And the other problem is that like because we had so much time in this other character's point of view, we spent the entirety of book 1 getting super attached to Levira and Ivar, and then I feel like by the end of this book I cared less about those characters that I was really invested with, because first of all, Levira's point of view is really boring in this book. It's boring in this one. I did not care, which is terrible. But like I still want to care about those two characters, but like they're barely in here, and so it's kind of like, I mean, I don't want to be like, oh, out of sight, out of mind, but also at the same time, you spent all this time getting me attached, and then like you spend half of this book on somebody else, and so like I don't care as much. I don't care. I am still reading book 3. I am going to finish this series, but I just don't really kind of get what the point of book 2 is. I mean, thematically I get it, but to be perfectly honest, thematically I think a lot of this was unnecessary, because I think a lot of what was added in here with the new perspective in terms of like relation to the themes of the series, I think we didn't need, because we already had that with Levira and Ivar's point of view. I don't think this third POV really added anything plot-wise. So far there's been no payoff, and thematically it didn't really matter. So I'm not gonna lie, this was a little bit of a disappointment. I like series to go like this instead of like this. But I do still have high hopes that book 3 will have just an absolutely massive payoff at the end. So far it doesn't seem like it's gonna, but I don't know. I'm barely into it, so we'll see how it goes. This is one that I don't necessarily know that I will be able to recommend or not, I think, until I finish this series. I genuinely think this is going to be one that it just depends on how the series ends. But I will say, to this series' credit, Mark Lawrence is a talented writer. I do like his writing style. There are pros to this series. It's also possible that this is just not a series for me personally, and that's fine. That's gonna happen. But 3 stars, I will hold my judgment until I have finished this series. And then the last 2 books that I have to talk about is Carl's Doomsday Scenario and the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook by Matt Dinniman. This is Dungeon Crawler Carl book 2 and 3. For the ease of my arms, I'm just gonna hold up Carl's Doomsday Scenario instead of holding up both of them. This has got to be one of the most entertaining book series that I have ever read in my life. Truly, it's so entertaining. This book is like gaining popularity by the day, so you've probably already heard people talk about this. Basically, it's the apocalypse, aliens have arrived, and now they have this dungeon, and they're forcing the humans to go through this dungeon as an entertainment. It's like, I think one of the taglines of this series is like, the apocalypse will be televised. This is also a lit RPG, so as you're reading it, it definitely does feel like you are in a video game or like maybe playing Dungeons and Dragons, stuff, something like that. In this, you're following the main character Carl, and he also has with him his ex-girlfriend's show cat, Princess Donut. And Princess Donut is actually like sentient human level intelligence because she was the first cat that entered the dungeon. Being the first cat in the dungeon, she got like a potion that made her human level intelligence. And so it's the two of them navigating this dungeon. In theory, if you make it past floor 18, if you make it to like kill the final boss on floor 18, then you become the ruler of Earth. This dungeon crawl is like televised to like trillions and trillions of citizens like across the galaxy. It's like a really, really big production, and they have like multiple seasons of this. Obviously there's only going to be one Earth season because the aliens are going to destroy the planet. I mean, unless someone kills the boss on floor 18 and then takes over as the ruler of Earth. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. If you read the book, it makes sense, but it is kind of hard to explain all the ins and outs of the premise of this series. To be perfectly honest, this series is a little bit unhinged, but like in the best way possible. If you can kill that boss, you can rule Earth, but the problem is no one has ever in the history of this thing happening, all of these like hundreds of seasons of this dungeon crawl, no one has ever made it past, I think they said floor 13. So it's like, yeah, they have it set up so like, yeah, you could be Earth's new ruler, but you're set up to fail. It does have like a little bit of a Hunger Games vibe in that the humans are at a severe disadvantage. Like the alien technology is just like years and years, like millions of years past where Earth technology is. And while they're in the dungeon, they are providing entertainment to the masses of aliens, and they are being exploited the entire time. This book has a lot of messages about capitalism and exploiting people and corporations being evil, which I know is like the same as capitalism, but like honestly, this book series does have a lot to say, and the more that I get into it, the more that it has to say, and that's something that I really, really like about it. At this point, I am like so very, very attached to both Carl and Donut. I don't know, 2/3 of the way through book 2, which is this one, they end up with like a third crawler as a part of their party. And in book 3, this third crawler, she finally feels like she's a very, very shy person. She's very introverted, but like by the time we're in book 3, at like the end of that one, she finally feels like comfortable around Donut and Carl, and like Donut and her just roast Carl all the time. And like, I think it's funny. I do. I did have some issues with a little bit of ableist language and a little bit of, okay, we get it, that's a lot of boobs in book 1. And I also had some issues with Matt Dinniman just like repeating himself in book 1. By the time I finish book 3, all of those issues have been resolved. Now, I do want to make it clear that like I am not a disabled person, I am able-bodied. While I noticed the ableist language in book 1, it is possible that like I am not noticing it because it is, you know, something that's going over my head as an able-bodied person. I don't think we talked about a single pair of boobs in book 3, which also made me very happy. And the repetition is also gone. I think like honestly, Matt Dinniman just wanted to make the rules of the dungeon just like very, very crystal clear for the reader. I myself am like a very, very avid gamer, so I think like for me, there was a lot of stuff that was like really obvious. So it's like once he said it one time, I was like, yes, okay, that makes logical sense. Got it. I'm a gamer. I understand. But then he would like repeat that information. So probably for the people who are not gamers that read this, I don't really know, but it doesn't matter because the repetition problem that I had in book 1 is completely resolved by book 3. I think this series is endlessly entertaining. I think the commentary in here, specifically about exploitation and capitalism, is just so absolutely phenomenal. The conversations that we get inside Carl's head about like how he is just like part of this machine and like how he is trying to resist, but at the same time these aliens, like, they are actively exploiting him. They are forcing him to entertain them, and they're putting him in scenarios where he has to make extremely tough decisions. In book 2, we also start to learn about the NPCs. We got like a little bit about like the NPCs in the dungeon, because like, I mean, if you've ever played a video game and you've ran a dungeon, like, there's a lot of mobs. You gotta kill them so that you can get experience. And we touched a little bit on NPCs in book 1, and then in book 2 and in book 3 we learn a lot more about like the systems that the dungeon is operating on and like what these NPCs are. There's been quite a few moments in this series that do a really good job of tugging on my heartstrings and making me care about like all of the players involved, not just Carl and Donut, even though like I'm obsessed with them. I love Carl and Donut at this point. Like I'm all in on this series. I just love it. I did also want to mention that I personally find this series pretty funny. I think also that like book 1 had like a couple of funny moments. I think Matt Dinniman gets better at writing humorous moments as the series continues. I found book 3 to be exponentially more funny than book 1. I think just first of all, the situational humor like within the dungeon and like the world is funnier, but like also Matt Dinniman's comedic timing is also a lot better because he's written more books, he's gotten better at writing. So I do find this to be a funny series, but I did just want to mention that it is like a little bit of dude bro humor. I personally don't have a problem with it, but I do know that like that sense of humor is not going to be for everyone because humor is so subjective. I do think that there are going to be plenty of people that just don't enjoy the humor of this, and that is fine. I do recommend kind of maybe giving book 1 like 100 pages, 150 pages, and like trying it out before you like fully commit to this series. Like I said, humor is subjective, and a lot of the entertainment and enjoyment of this series for me is the humor, and if it doesn't work for you, you're just not going to get the same enjoyment. And then I did also want to mention that there is grossness in this series. The grossness is intentional, and in my opinion, I think it serves a purpose, and I think it, to be perfectly honest, really works within the series. Like I said, this is a series that talks about capitalism and exploitation, and like Carl and Donut are being put through the meat grinder for other people's entertainment. The people that are watching, like, think about when people watch like an action movie. They're like, oh yeah, look at the blood and the guts and the explosions, wow. This is entertainment. So the aliens that are running this dungeon have purposely put in disgusting things in here to make it entertaining to the masses, except we in Carl and Donut's head are like, ew, that's nasty. That guy just got decapitated. If you really don't like a lot of blood and guts, this might not be for you. For me personally, I also really love horror, so this series so far has not even come close to some of the horror that I read. I mean, some of the horror I read is like more psychological or like literary horror that really is like not gross at all, but like also when we're talking about like the most gross horror that I've read, this doesn't even come close. At least it hasn't so far. My friend Rachel, who gifted me the first 4 books in this series, told me like, oh, don't worry, it gets worse. And I was like, oh, thank you. I'm not ready to cry for Donut at all. It's fine. But if you are the type of reader that like you don't like blood and guts, you don't want to read about people getting blown up, not people like, well, people, but I meant more like the NPCs within the dungeon and stuff like that. Some of the mobs are just disgusting. If that's not the type of reader you are, don't pick up the series because you're not going to like it. But if you enjoy the same type of horror that I enjoy, then I think that you will like this. I think you'll understand that the grossness serves a purpose. That being said, I rated books 2 and 3 both 4 stars in this series. Book 1 I gave 3.5 stars. Both of these are improvements. I think book 2, it's just like Matt Denneman was still just like kind of getting his feet set in this world. This is much better than book 1, but it wasn't enough to like bump it up to like a true 5 star. Book 3 I actually fully thought was going to be a 5 star for like half the book. In book 3, the level of the dungeon is railroads and like it's like subway, like all the different types of railways, they're like replicating all of it. So like you got like bullet trains, like steam locomotives, like all of that stuff. That is like the entire floor of the dungeon. And like honestly, from a creative point of view, it works so well. It's so fascinating. However, I would say like once you hit like the halfway point until you get to like the 3/4 way point, there is kind of like a lull in the pacing of the story. And to be perfectly honest, there's too much train conversation. Like there were moments where I was reading where I could feel my eyes glazing over because I was like, damn, Carl, how much are you gonna talk about trains? Unfortunately, that halfway to 3/4 of the way portion of the book did really dim my enjoyment of it, but overall I still had a really good time. And like the final quarter of the book, like the ending of it, explosive. I mean, also Carl does a lot with bombs and explosives, so it's like explosive entertainment wise, but also like literally explosive because Carl is blowing things up. That like the final part of the book, absolutely fantastic. There just was that middle-ish area where I was like, this is a lot of train talk. This is too much train talk if we're being honest. But I do still think it is like super creative to have this like train dungeon. Honestly, I would play that as a video game. That is book 2 and 3 of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I gave them both 4 stars. At this point, I do really recommend this series as long as you're okay with the grossness and as long as you like the humor. I think like it is just, it's so entertaining. It's so entertaining. And I need to read book 4. I just need to finish these books for this vlog and then I can keep reading. Those are the 4 books that I have to talk to you about today. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing so that you can see these vlogs that I keep talking about whenever I finally get around to doing them. Let me know what the best book that you read in May was. I hope you stay safe and stay cool this week, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye!